Okay, this is synthetic division of polynomials. This is a different type of division for some polynomials. We can only use it sometimes, but it's really useful and a lot quicker than long division. So two things you need to know, dividend and divisor. Dividend is what you're dividing into, which in this case for the warm-up would be this one right here. Divisor is what you're dividing by. So go ahead and pause the video and try this warm-up with long division like we would in our previous lesson. Okay, let's go through this. Long division works the same way with polynomials as it does with regular numbers. So how do we turn x into 2x cubed? Well, I would have to multiply by 2x squared. And of course, we don't just multiply to the x out front. We multiply to that -3 next to it. And then we subtract. And we subtract both terms. So if you'd like, you could scratch this out and write a plus, since we are subtracting it. These two cancel out. I'm left with -x squared. So next up, how do we turn this into this? Multiply by -x. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to bring down my 0. For dividing by two terms, we have to match it with two terms. So -x squared plus 3x, that's this multiplied to both of these. Again, we are subtracting every time, just like in regular long division. So this turns to a plus, this turns to a minus. You don't have to scratch out the symbols. It's up to you, but it's really useful to remember that your terms flip. Bring down your -4. To turn x into -3x, we multiply by -3. -3x plus 9. Subtract. So we have a remainder of 13. So in total, our answer is 2x squared minus x minus 3 minus 13 over the divisor of x minus 3. That is our answer to our long division problem. I'm going to show you a bit faster way of doing this. I like this a lot, but this only works when the divisor has a lead coefficient of 1. And I'm going to restate that too. So, synthetic division. We're going to divide this same thing using synthetic division. So synthetic division uses the coefficients of the dividend. This only works when the divisor's lead coefficient is 1. Okay, so make sure you write that part down. Pause the video to get through it. A little messy, so I'm just touching that up. Okay, step 1. You're going to write the solution of the divisor and the coefficients of the dividend. So I've written them in these different colors here. So what you do is you take what you're dividing by, set it equal to 0, and solve it to get this number that we put in a box right here. Then we take the coefficients and print them out here. Make sure to always, fill in your missing terms if you have any. All right, so the first thing we're doing is just solving the divisor, putting it inside a little box, and printing out the coefficients of the dividend. So 2, -7, 0, and -4. Make sure you don't forget about the symbols. Those are really important. So there's a pattern to this. What you're doing every time you see a down arrow in this, you're just adding something down. Every time we go across diagonally, we are multiplying by this number in the box. So step 2, bring down the first coefficient. That will always be your first step. Bring down the first one. We're going to multiply any number below the line by the 0 of the divisor, which is 3 in this case. It'll be different for each one. What we're going to generate down here are the coefficients of our soon-to-be answer. So if you remember, this one had 2 to begin with. It's kind of like a shortcut to generate the coefficients, which we'll then fill in a moment. So again, step 1, drop down the first coefficient and then multiply it by your number in the box. And then we're going to add this product with the coefficient above. So anytime you drop down, you are just adding whatever you see in this column. That's why this one was just 2. Okay? So again, step 1, drop down the first coefficient and multiply it by the number in the box. And I guess the second part of step 2, add these together and drop them down. We're going to repeat this process until we've filled out this bottom row entirely. And it's going to look a little crazy at first, but the more you do it, the easier it'll get. So let me erase this. So we drop this down. When we bring the new number up, we multiply by our 3, drop down and add it all together. Multiply again by the 3 in the box, add down, and we get our negative 13. And these numbers should look familiar because they're the same ones we had in our example. So it's a crisscross pattern. To create the numbers here, we multiply by the number in the box with the number underneath. And then to create our new numbers underneath, we add down. So I'm going to be doing this a couple times just to show you the pattern, but let me bring back what I had written before. Oop, a little too much. Okay. So, what to do with these numbers? Well, the last one is always the remainder. The second to last is your constant, which is a number without a variable. And then after that, you just count up in powers of x, and you go as far as you need to. You know, we could have some long answers, dot, dot, dot. This one just goes out to x squared. And then what we're going to do is attach the powers of x to those coefficients we made. Getting this. 2x squared minus 1x minus 3 with our remainder. So it's the same exact answer we had from long division, but done synthetically. Okay, so I want to go through this a couple more times to show you, while it looks a little weird at first, the patterns are the same every single time. So let's try more. I'm going to erase my work. There we go. All right, so let's try one more time. Step 1, solve the divisor and write the coefficients. So if I have dividing by x minus 1, I set that equal to 0, and in my box goes 1. And then I print out the coefficients of the dividend. Now remember, any variable by itself actually has a 1 in front. Okay, so take a second and write that down. So I'm going to follow the steps I had before. Drop down the first one, 1. To get my new number here, I multiply it by my red number in the box. Eventually, you're going to see that I'm not really going to write these arrows as much, just the first one. So 1 times 1 is 1. Add down, we have 6. Multiply across again, 6 times the 1 in the box is 6. Add down, 6 plus negative 1 is 5. Multiply diagonally. 5 times the 1 in the box is 5. Add down, and we get 0. This just means we have a remainder of 0. So remainder, constant, x squared. Always start with the remainder, then the constant, then the x squared. Now, you're not really going to see someone write 1x squared. I'll write it this one time just to show you. So 1x squared plus 6x plus 5 with no remainder. So we don't write anything else. So it's just equal to. I'm going to go through another example of this before I give you a try it problem to do yourself. So make sure you write that down. But also notice, it takes up a lot less space than your long division. So I really encourage you to try and use this. And remember, it only works when the lead coefficient of the divisor is 1. So if I had something like 4x minus 1, I wouldn't be able to use this because there'd be a fraction in the box instead of a regular number. Okay, next up. So b minus 4, that's going to be my number in the box. B minus 4 equals 0, so b equals 4. Give myself some space. Okay, and now I'm going to write out the coefficients. So 1b cubed, negative 13b squared, 41b, and negative 29. I'm going to draw my line. Well, I'll give a little more space. As a squiggly line. Step 1, drop the first one, 1. Multiply by the number in the box, 4. Add down again, 4 and negative 13 makes negative 9. Multiply by the number in the box, we got negative 36. Add that down, negative 36 and 41 leaves us with 5. Multiply by the number in the box again, 5 times 4 is 20. Add that down and we get negative 9. So remainder, constant, the number without a variable, x squared. So to write my answer normally, I need to give myself a little more space. 1x squared minus 9x plus 5 minus 9 over the divisor of, oh, I'm sorry, I'm putting x's instead of b's. B squared, b. B minus 4. Okay. All right. This is your try it problem. Go ahead and pause the video and give it a shot. All right. X minus 1 equals 0. Solve it. We get 1, and we're going to print out the coefficients. So 1 goes in the box, and we're going to print out the coefficients. Now, that's 3x cubed. We're missing a 0x squared, negative 5x, and positive 10. 10 is the coefficient in that one. Okay, so again, please remember to fill in your missing powers. All right. Drop the first coefficient, multiply it by the number in the box, add down, multiply by the number in the box, add down, multiply by the number in the box, and then add down. This one has a remainder of 8, it looks like. So we have remainder, constant, x squared. So, and again, sometimes you'll have a larger answer. It depends on what you start with. 3x squared plus 3x minus 2 plus 8 over the divisor x minus 1. And that is synthetic division. You use the coefficients and the 0 of the divisor, this, to print out the coefficients of the answer and then attach your variables. And that's it for me.